Episode 3 of Prehistoric Planet has finally dropped, this episode being Freshwater. The first episode, Coasts, had the general theme of death and water. Freshwater, episode 3, flips that theme to water and life, though of course there's definitely a lot of deaths, mostly baby death. Baby death, baby death, baby death. This episode opens on a canyon carved by rivers, sort of like the Grand Canyon. It probably is, maybe? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at some reference shots, because some parts of it look like the Grand Canyon, but there's definitely canyons that look like the Grand Canyon in other parts of the world, so it could just as well not be the Grand Canyon. Plus, this is my first initial thoughts, and I did not do any research before this because what would be the point in that? I'm sensing that this series has a pterosaur, dinosaur, marine reptile bias because we're not seeing much of anything else, except for the lizards in the last episode. That was pretty good. But we're not really seeing much of invertebrates, fish, crocodiles highlighted at all. I know that it's all a matter of choosing which animals get more screen time, and so some animals have to be cut, but crocs were basically everywhere, in every ecosystem, in every formation, throughout the entire Mesozoic era, though crocodiles themselves were not in the Triassic. You had phytosaurs and proto-crocodiles. I think that's the only thing that's disappointing about this whole series, at least so far, is that there's no crocs, and I really like crocs. Also a lack of ceratopsians and ankylosaurs, but, that's neither here nor there. So the first scene is the pterosaur and velociraptor scene. There's a whole rookery of pterosaurs, presumed to be juvenile ashtarchids. Dr. Mark Whitten has suggested that they are meant to be juvenile ashtarchids, but the documentary never says exactly what they are, and no one else has said what they are, and all the experts are waiting for the whole show to come out before they spill the beans. The velociraptor hunting scenes are extremely reminiscent of the snow leopard and eagle hunts that have been shown in other nature documentaries, and I thought that was really cool because, of course, similar things like that would have happened. A consequence of the fossil record is that there are some environments that are not conducive to fossilization, like mountains and rainforests. The soil in rainforests is extremely acidic and eats away the vast majority of the things that die before they get a chance to fossilize. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rules. And then in mountains, there's just not a lot of chances for things to get buried and fossilized. That being said, mountains existed throughout the Mesozoic, and dinosaurs and other animals would have taken to adapting to the mountains, so it was really cool to see velociraptors climbing up the sides of these canyons, though canyons aren't mountains, but I think you get what I mean. The behind-the-scenes uncovered episode makes the point of talking about the scientific viability of the feather covering of the velociraptors, which is so uncontroversial among experts in the field and quote-unquote paleo-enthusiasts that its inclusion taking up most of the runtime of the behind-the-scenes video is kind of underserving the vast majority of the stuff that's shown in the actual episode. But like the could T-Rex actually swim bit in the first episode's behind the scenes, I kind of get it because the vast majority of the general audience will have never seen velociraptors clad in feathers quite like they were in this episode. My general critique is that those segments need to be like 15 minutes long, or just make a bunch of short ones, talking about each segment of the episode. An interesting point made is that the feathers are not just for flying, and not just for insulation, but can be a sort of armor against prey and enemies and competition, because if you have enough feathers, just like with mammals having enough fur, it can stop the weapons of other animals from getting to the vital organs. The feathers can also be an armor in so much as a cushion to help them cushion their falls, as in this episode when the velociraptor female that was leading the group of velociraptors on the hunt decides to jump off the side of the cliff, and she rolls and tumbles and lands at the bottom of the gorge without breaking anything. From there we go to another T-Rex scene. It is unclear if these are the exact same Tyrannosauruses from the first episode, but we can assume probably, considering how we're jumping back and forth between different places. So in this case, this scene would probably go before the scene of the Tyrannosaurus in the first episode, because this scene shows the mating ritual prelude to the existence of Hank's children. It starts off with the male Tyrannosaurus showing off his injuries to the camera while he rests next to a Triceratops carcass which he killed previously. It was cool to not see a battle between a Triceratops and a Tyrannosaurus because that would be cliche. That being said, we haven't really seen a Tyrannosaurus versus Triceratops battle shown realistically in a documentary or a movie ever, considering that Triceratops was such a powerful animal that the vast majority of the battles between Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops would not have ended with the Triceratops dying. Also, when the Tyrannosaurus goes to take some meat off of the neck of the Triceratops, I was like, oh no, they're gonna do the thing, The Tyrannosaurus decapitation of Triceratops carcass strategy, which was actually like a paper not too long ago and was a thing that they definitely could have done, just rip the head straight off and eat the meat from the back of the head, but they didn't do that, so that probably would have been a little too graphic for the general audience, even though that's nature and who really cares. The end of the male's tail is ripped off, which makes me think it would have been even cooler to show this Tyrannosaurus as the specimen of Tyrannosaurus called Y-Rex, which has almost all of its tail ripped off, though that specimen is in question as to whether it survived after most of its tail was ripped off, or if that was just an artifact of preservation, so I can see why they didn't do that. And when the T-Rex goes to the river to wash off his injuries, I was thinking, yeah, it could help, or it could make it worse because there could be bacteria and parasites in the water, but it's fast moving water instead of stagnant water, so the narrator was right. It's also interesting that they're not specifically saying that the male or female is bigger than the other. They're not really showing sexual dimorphism in quite as strong words as some other documentaries or other experts have said. In this scenario, the male is bigger than the female because the female is younger, but they're not saying, therefore, males are inherently larger, so that's interesting. From the T-Rex scene, we go to the Deinocheirus scene, and it seems like at least one segment in each of these episodes has a standout physical practical effect prop. And now that I'm saying that, I don't remember one from the first episode. Well, my memory's crap, so I wouldn't remember it anyway. The second episode definitely had an arm prop for the Madagascar when it interacted with the dead wood, and there's a strong possibility that there are more and you just can't tell. In this episode, there's definitely a neck prop for the Deinocheirus as the hair-like feathers interacts with the water perfectly, but I think there's an arm prop as well, because there's a scene where the camera is angled looking up while underwater and a hand comes down and grabs some water weeds, and the weeds are real. But the hand could or could not be, but the hand interacts with the water weeds perfectly enough to where I think it might actually be a prop. Now, there's been some conversation in the last couple years since the discovery of the rest of Deinocheirus' skeleton of whether or not it was covered in feathers. Deinocheirus was an ornithomimosaur, and ornithomimosaurs are maniraptorans. There have been some fossils of ornithomimosaurs with feathers, suggesting that the entire group had feathers, and considering that ornithomimosaurs are maniraptorans, and maniraptorans were basically the whole group that definitely had feathers, and had feathers ancestrally, some have suggested that Deinocheirus would have been clad in feathers, except Deinocheirus is absolutely massive. And there's been some discussion as to whether feathers might impede the life of something that large, like how elephants only have sparse hair and live in hot climates, and Deinocheirus lived in hot climates and was large, but here it's reconstructed with thick emu, Sasquatch-like feathers. So it will definitely be interesting to hear the rationale behind that, because it could really be either way, considering feathers have more application than just keeping the body warm. Also, dino poop. Real dino poop. Well, not real dino poop, but a prop. So that was cool. You don't really see dino poop like that very often. From the Deinocheirus scene, we go to the Quetzalcoatlus scene. David Attenborough says that this is southern Africa, so that's weird. Either we're going from the Deinocheirus in Asia to southern Africa and then going to where Quetzalcoatlus is known to have lived, or they're going on the assumption that Quetzalcoatlus and other giant Ashtarchids were intracontinental flyers, which is plausible and possible, but there's no evidence for it, which is kind of the general rationale behind most of the decisions in this documentary series, which I'm all for, but they could have explained that through the narration or visually through different jump cuts to different parts of the world. That wouldn't have taken much time to do. Anyway, Quetzalcoatlus is not known from southern Africa. Its bones are only found in the US. This whole segment is the mother Quetzalcoatlus laying eggs and protecting its nest like an alligator, protecting the eggs until they hatch, the narration suggesting that from there they'll be left to fend for themselves, which more or less lines up with the fossil record. We're again met with leathery eggs, but not quite like a croc's leathery eggs or a turtle's leathery eggs, because they still hold their general shape of being round tubes but are soft, which you can see when the rival female Quetzalcoatlus smushes it between the beak. Kind of just squishes. Also, again, the lack of crocs, but this time the lack of crocs is absolutely criminal because we're in a swamp. Where else would there be crocs but a swamp? Could have just used real live crocs. Didn't even have to spend the money on CGI crocs. Come on now. Come on now. Come on now. Then from the Quetz segment, we go to the Madagascar segment, which is in Madagascar. Now, I wasn't paying enough attention, and I've only seen the episode once, as to whether the narrator said this was Madagascar, but it's kind of irrelevant. Madagascar comes from the Maverano Formation of Madagascar of the latest Cretaceous period. It's honestly criminal that you go to Madagascar and only show Madagascar and Beelzebufo when the ecosystem was full of weird stuff. You got Simosuchus, the cutest crocodile ever. How could you go latest Cretaceous Madagascar and not show Simosuchus? I'm a little butthurt because I was working on a Simosuchus video and I was hoping it would show up so I could use it in that video, but whatever. Also, no Mahajangasuchus, which would have been really cool. No Majangasaurus, but the crocs are cooler, so. No Rapetosaurus, no Rhehonavis, no Falcatakili, no nothing, just Madagascar and Beelzebufo, which, to be fair, are two really bizarre animals anyway. So Madagascar had weird jaws and teeth that curved downwards and outwards, but the face bones of Madagascar had so many pits and holes and pneumaticity that the lips would have covered all of it, and which is being showed here, which I think is really cool. One criticism I have is that the babies look a little too much like just downsized versions of the adults, and when it comes to animals that take care of their young, those young tend to be underdeveloped and tend to look not like the adult. So here it's a little weird that the babies look like downsized adults, but the adult is caring for the babies. But whatever. It's not a big deal. The Beelzebufo is no longer considered the largest frog, but, it's still one of the largest frogs to ever live, so that's still correct as to what the narrator said, but I would have liked to see more scenes of Beelzebufo, because giant frog is giant froge, and I want giant froge, okay? From the Madagascar scene, we go to Elasmosaur scene, where they show elasmosaurs going between fresh and brackish water environments. The narration makes it clear a couple times that they're just visiting and exploring, though they would probably have been taking advantage of all of the bits and yummy nubbies that are living in the swamp areas. Would have been cool to see them interacting with the land animals, but we do see some land animals looking at the elasmosaurs breaching and stuff, including a sauropod. Don't know what that is. Kind of looks like an Alamosaurus, but the last time we were in Madagascar, and before that it was Southern Africa, and before that it was Asia, so we're not even really near North America, but whatever. The elasmosaurs do look like remodeled Tyrannosaurs, despite the two looking quite different from the fossils, but to save money, I can understand. Plus, you don't really see the elasmosaurs that clearly, so it is what it is. So that's been episode 3. Can't wait for episode 4, which is Ice Worlds. We get to see Olorotitan, we get to see Edmontosaurus, and we get to see the forest fires with the feathered dinosaurs. Still no Therizinosaurus though. That's rumored to come in at the forests episode, which we'll probably also see the Zalmoxes. So far, I think this is the weakest structured, like the weakest writing and story, but visually and conceptually, it's kind of the coolest. So I'd put deserts as a 9 out of 10, coasts as an 8 out of 10, and this one as a 7 out of 10. Let me know what you think about this episode and all the past episodes in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more of these unscripted videos. I'm never gonna not do scripted content, but you know, this has been an exercise in trying to refrain from saying us, like, so on, connective words. I hate it. Anyway, goodbye. For more interesting stories about nature, the history of life, or what goes bump in the night, subscribe, hit the bell icon for updates, like this video, and drop a comment in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my elephant tier patrons, Ray, Isaiah Garza, Dinosaur, Christoph Hubinger, Biotaverse, and Arda Bayer. And another thanks to my Tyrannosaurus tier patrons, The Dogman, Iron Bladesman, Danny Van Heck, and Dana Manchester.